Quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
can you state
She's asking a
categorically,
question. Don't
Mr.
be
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You are
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can
No,
you
I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Dave versus the MSM. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com with extra shows, extra videos, extra content, extra guests, extra analysis, archives to all of our shows, including the podcast for our Sunday live radio show. Available 24/7 at davejanda.com. Tremendous amount of free public information there, great interviews, free. We have a great show that focuses on the road to freedom. Something I did based on my family's 4-generational battle against the globalist scum syndicate. It's on the homepage free, right there for you, as a number of our interviews are. We also have the subscription side, 30 cents a day, priceless information, $9 a month, single greatest bang for the buck in all the internet. Incredible insight on that platform. We hope you become part of our freedom family. DaveJanda.com. Today's topic is something the bought-off lamestream fake media will not touch. It's Biden's Nordstream-Gate. Let me give you the Reader's Digest version. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines that were to bring natural gas from Russia to Western Europe. The destruction of those pipelines on September 26, 2022, was one of the world's biggest environmental disasters, one of the world's biggest humanitarian disasters, and was in fact an act of war, and could well be the linchpin of why World War III comes to fruition for the globalist cult. It's an environmental disaster because the bombing of those pipelines led to billions of cubic feet of methane to be dispersed into the ocean, then into the atmosphere. So whoever did it obviously is declaring war against climate, against the environment. Secondly, humanitarian disaster. Because with the implosion or explosion of those pipelines, right before the winter season commenced, it put all of Europe, every home in Europe, every business, every hospital, every school, in harm's way because it led to more difficulties in heating every one of those facilities. And with inadequate heating, people can get sick and die. So whoever perpetrated this heinous act were the perpetrators of an incredible humanitarian disaster. And as I mentioned, it is an act of war. Let's go to Gary Barnett, political commentator. That's what he said. Concerning the state, there are no accidents, no coincidences, and no natural emergencies or threats. All is planned. Once again, everything in politics and government is planned in advance, is not accidental. Any coincidence, natural or organic, as all is staged in one way or another to either affect a certain outcome or cover up another. Believe nothing in the mainstream or government. Trust nothing, question everything, and never accept any reports unless you can verify the real facts in order to find the truth. And Barnett then quotes I.F. Stone, quote, all governments are run by liars, and nothing they say should be believed, end quote. This happened on September 26, 2022. And very soon after that, the people that I have contact with behind the curtain, which is what I bring forward, there are issues I cannot discuss on social media or on the radio because of deep state choke points. That's why we have the subscription platform. And in particular, my WTF show, where I bring information forward every Wednesday from behind the curtain. And then on my Insider Insight show on Thursday, where I bring someone from behind to talk about what's really going on. Very soon after September 26, I was getting feedback from my sources that I've developed over 35 years that the West was involved in this takedown of the pipelines. And the reason why, reportedly, was that there was concern that Germany, that was a part owner of the pipelines, was in negotiations behind the curtain with Russia. And the concern was that if Germany cut a deal with Russia and other European countries did, that would increase the leverage of Putin to fracture NATO and their support of Ukraine. And that was the driving force behind the West's involvement in the destruction of those pipelines. I was told that explosives were used to blow those pipelines, that they had been placed during military exercises earlier in the year, and that there was a detonation event also under the guise of a military exercise very, very close to when the explosion occurred. And in fact, at the beginning of October, end of September, I brought forward to our subscribers the fact that in the summer of 2022, every year in the Baltics, in the Baltic Ocean, there is a Baltos military exercise of which NATO countries are involved. And then on September 25th, the day before, there was another military exercise looking at unmanned underwater operations. I was derided by many people for my suggestion and bringing information forward that this was not a Russian event, that this could have had origins elsewhere. And when something like this happens, you always have to ask who benefits. Well, Russia surely didn't benefit because it removed their number one lever for leverage with the destruction of that pipeline. But there was a pipeline that just so happened to come into fruition right when this blew from Norway that, well, went to Europe. Wow, there was great demand for this. And there was also great demand for liquefied natural gas from the United States. Imagine that. And of concern was information that we put forward that on February 7th, 2022, Joe Biden held a press conference, and I played it on our radio show a number of times, where he was asked about the Nord Stream pipeline, and he said, well, if Russia goes into Ukraine, which they did on February 22nd or 21st of 2022, that the Nord Stream pipelines would no longer exist. And this was also supported several weeks later by Victoria Nuland, who works at the State Department, who stated, quote, I want to be very clear to you today. If Russia invades Ukraine one way or another, Nord Stream II will not move forward, end quote. In fact, I mentioned Joe Biden. Now, let me give you exact words on February 7th. I do play this clip on the radio, but here's what he said on February 7th, 2022. Quote, if Russia invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream II. We will bring it to an end. Well, on February of this year, Cy Hirsch, well-known investigative journalist, he was the journalist who came forward about the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. He was the journalist who came forward about Abu Ghraib in the Middle East. And he came forward on this. and said that his sources had come forward and told him that the West was involved, and in particular, the United States. Hirsch has concluded, this from Zero Hedge, Hirsch has concluded the United States blew up the Russia to Germany natural gas pipeline as part of a covert operation under the guise of the Baltops 22 NATO exercise. That's that exercise I told people about in the summer of 2022. Hirsch describes months of discussions back and forth involving the Biden White House, the CIA, and the Pentagon. The report says planning was in the works all the way back to December of 2021, with a special task force formed under the aegis of U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Throughout, quote, all of this scheming, end quote, the source said, quote, some working guys in the CIA and the State Department were saying, quote, don't do this. It's stupid and will be a political nightmare if it comes out, end quote. Yeah, the incitement of World War III. In addition to the environmental disaster, in addition to the humanitarian disaster to all of Europe. Nevertheless, in early 2022, the CIA working group reported back to Sullivan's interagency group, quote, we have a way to blow up the pipelines, end quote. As for Washington motives in such a risky covert sabotage mission, Hirsch writes, quote, as long as Europe remained dependent on the pipelines for cheap natural gas, Washington was afraid that countries like Germany would be reluctant to supply Ukraine with the money and weapons it needed to, quote, defeat Russia, end quote. This is exactly what I was telling people in early October 2022, right after this blew. And I was deemed a conspiracy theorist, that I was wrong. Hirsch points out Norway played a significant logistics and intelligence role in assisting the elite U.S. Navy deep sea diving team and divers based out of Panama City, Florida, carry out the operation. The pipelines ran more than a mile apart along the seafloor that was only 260 feet deep. That would be well within the range of the divers, who operated from a Norwegian Alta-class mine hunter, would dive with a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium streaming from their tanks and plant shaped C4 charges on the 4 pipelines with concrete protective covers. Hirsch's sources underscore that the order came directly from President Biden's office. The C4 attached to the pipelines would be triggered by a sonar buoy dropped by a plane on short notice at a later date. But the procedure involved the most advanced signal processing technology. On September 26, 2022, according to Hirsch, a Norwegian Navy P-8 surveillance plane made a seemingly routine flight and dropped a sonar buoy. The signal spread underwater, initially to Nordstream II and then out to Nordstream I. A few hours later, the high-powered C4 explosives were triggered, and 3 of the 4 pipelines were put out of commission. The White House has said that what Hirsch has presented, alleging the United States was behind explosions of the Nord Stream pipelines, is utterly false, completely fiction. Biden went to Ukraine over President's Day rather than going to Ohio with the disaster there. He avoided that for 3 weeks, but found a way not to go 400 and some miles to Ohio, went thousands of miles, over 4,000 miles to Ukraine. Then he went to Warsaw, of which he fell up the steps again getting to the plane. But Biden slipped, not just on the stairways going up to Air Force One, or whatever it is, but he also slipped in what he said. From Richard Abelson, on February 21st. Biden confesses Nord Stream terror attack again in Warsaw. Quote, we mobilized to reduce dependence on Russian energy, end quote. Visiting Warsaw on February 21st, 2023, White House resident Joe Biden once again acknowledged his regime is behind the attack on Nord Stream pipeline on September 26, 2022. He stated, quote, Putin thought he could use energy as a weapon, but no. We mobilized and reduced our dependence on Russian energy resources, end quote, Biden said in Warsaw. So let's just wrap this. Il Demente Biden, the environmental resident of the White House, who is currently and has been jamming the globalist cult's totalitarian green agenda down the throats of every American, is in fact, and apparently, responsible for the world's most catastrophic environmental disaster by ordering and blowing up underwater pipelines. And Hirsch has confirmed it all at this point. So Il Demente and his gang of thugs have destroyed the environment by blowing up that pipeline, put every European in harm's way because of their inability to heat their homes and businesses and schools and hospitals. And also, the cherry on top is Biden, with their involvement in blowing up the pipelines documented by Hirsch, ushered in not just an act of war, but World War III. That is what you'll never hear from the bought-off lamestream fake media. Never. Because the bought-off lamestream fake media is the tentacle of the deep state. And they are complicit in this reign of terror that they've perpetrated, the globalist cult, for decades. How do we stop this? Demanding transparency, that's how we stop it. You see, the cult, whether it's Biden or Obama or the Bushes or McConnell or McCarthy or Ryan or Romney or the Clintons, they're all cockroaches who can't stand the light of truth. Neither can any of the media. Neither can about 99% of those that hold federal office, state office, or even at times local offices. The best thing you can do is educate as many people as you can around you. And then you need to contact all those elected representatives and say, we're onto your con. Stop it. We know who's behind all this stuff. Stop it. Because if you don't, we're going to find people to replace you in the next election. They're not going to listen to that, Dave. Oh, yeah, they do. There are two things globalist scum politicians are afraid of. They can only rig the machines so much. They can only rig the events so much. They know that if you, the public, is wise to an issue and calling them out on it and they don't respond, that no matter how much they rig things, they won't get elected. Because you have promised them that you're telling your friends and your families and your relatives and your neighbors and your coworkers, and these are all people that are in their districts. They're afraid of that. And it trumps, no pun intended, all of the money they get from the globalist cult syndicate lobbyists. Fact. I thank you for your time today. Join us 24/7 at davejanda.com. Tremendous amount of free content. But where the real meat of the matter is, where I go into issues I cannot go into on this platform or any social media platform or on the radio, is on the subscription side. Try it for a month. $9. It's priceless. Our subscribers tell me that the information I have provided to them has saved their lives. Not hyperbole, fact. And it has. And I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep providing that to those who listen and are willing to become part of our freedom family for a fraction of what it costs to buy a pizza these days. One pizza. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.